Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to a new episode of Iblis Manifestations Podcast. It was exactly 2 years ago, on the 4th of March, where the very first episode of this podcast came out, titled Paranormal Expeditions. This was where I shared a series of personal stories about paranormal experiences and hauntings, which very much changed the trajectory of my life in a sense. And since that episode, we have officially released 80 episodes in total on Iblis Manifestations. So, if you are a returning listener to this podcast, first of all, I just want to say thank you very much for joining me. And you know what? What better way to celebrate that 2-year anniversary of the podcast than to have none other than Mr. Erik Danielsson of the great Watain on the podcast. Erik is someone who probably is not in need of much of an introduction. I would make the presumption that most people who are tuning into Iblis Manifestations are already more than familiar with Watain, what they do, what they stand for, and what they mean when they do what they do. And if that is not the case, then I would say that this conversation in itself is fairly self-explanatory. So soon everything will be answered in that regards. So what I'm trying to say is that there's not really much of an introduction needed other than the fact that Watain as a black metal band have been a pillar of strength within this genre, who have always set the standard and have always gone above and beyond to create an experience that is otherworldly and is different to pretty much anything else that one might come across in not just today's world, but even within the extreme metal scene. Okay? All I can say is that my conversation with Erik was extremely rewarding. We got to touch upon a lot of very different subjects, and perhaps in the intended nature of this podcast, things did very much take into an esoteric nature as well, as one might have hoped, at least. So yeah, this was a very fun conversation, and I very much appreciated Erik's time. And he's very easy to listen to, I might say. And this podcast is certainly one of those occasions, I might add. So, to those of you who are new to Iblis Manifestations, if that happens to be the case, well, first of all, welcome. This is a podcast where we have long format, open-ended conversations with a lot of variety of different artists and individuals, predominantly from the underground scene, who have perspectives that you wouldn't necessarily find in a mainstream narrative or setting. So if that's something that you might find enjoyable, then please do consider subscribing to the channel and sharing the episode around if you enjoy the contents of what we had to discuss. And of course, more importantly, let us know your thoughts and feedback. The episodes don't have to end where the conversation ends necessarily, okay? And yeah, also one very important thing that I want to mention as well is that if you like your black and death metal straight to the fucking point and into the guts, then my band TRIVAX recently released our newest album, Iloa Burns Out. It came out via Cult Never Dies, and you can go check it out. You can go listen to it for free, whether it's on YouTube, Spotify, or wherever, or you can get it directly from our Bandcamp page. And I would make the presumption once again that if you're tuning into this episode, then you clearly have great taste in black and death metal. So it may be worth your time to check out the work of TRIVAX as well. We were originally formed in Iran and then later relocated to the UK. Parts of that actually bled into our conversation with Erik as well. So might be worth your time to check that out as well. And in addition to that, one thing that we all know is that in life, a lot of times we sometimes feel like things are just not working out the way they should be. And there's a lot of pressures and there's a lot of anxiety around things. And I feel that one of the very best ways to deal with that is to first and foremost take control of your physical health and your physical well-being. And with that in mind, I am now offering exclusive online coaching services which you guys can contact me about. You can do so using the Trial by Fire link in the description, and you can contact myself directly, and we can talk about how I can help you transform your life for the better. Now, ladies and gentlemen, with all of that out of the way, I am extremely excited to bring you the 80th edition of Iblis Manifestations Podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, please welcome Erik Danielsson to Iblis Manifestations. Okay then, Erik Danielsson, sir, welcome to Iblis Manifestations. It's a real pleasure to have you on the show, man. How are you doing?
Thank you. Thanks for having me. No, I'm doing good. Typical February hardcore misery, Northern Europe, fucking no mercy. No, but it's good. Yeah.
It's good. I've become quite accustomed to that northern misery since, of course, my origins of Iran. But I can see how it's influenced so much of the world's best metal that has come out over the decades.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I don't know. There's just something, especially when you arrive to this side of the winter, like the February side. It's just, you can see how the light is just flickering in people's eyes, like just this close to vanish forever into the oblivion. But I have my ways to cope, I guess.
Absolutely. I guess there's something inspiring about the twilight zone of that after all. One thing that I wanted to just quickly mention here, I like to make some very basic notes on what the podcast is going to be about, just to give myself the right mind frame going into it, because with Watain, it's such a large body of work, and it's an entire universe of its own, so there's many different things that we can touch. But just as I was writing down this on a piece of paper, 'cause that's how I like to do it, I put down your initial at the top of the page, which is right here. I've got it in front of me. And I put down E, which is, I know that's how you've kind of gone by for all over the years. And as I did that, it only dawned on me that the letter E is actually a trident. Is this something that you've been aware of for some time? Has this been intentional? Am I just late to the party, or what's going on?
No, but I mean, I'm one of the many things that I am, I suppose, or identify as the kids say these days, is a graphic designer and someone who is deeply accustomed to symbolic language, and I've always loved to play around with that and to work with that, it's not a new insight to me, I suppose, but I mean, I suppose in certain ways it makes sense, since I've always been the spokesperson of Watain, and I've also been the creative catalyst of most of our processes, at least when it comes to music and lyrics. So there is relevance in that in that insight, I suppose. But even more, I mean, it's definitely not my central interpretation of the Trident, but it's not it's not being ignored either, you know.
Sure, yes, I appreciate that. Thank you for the clarification. I just thought it was interesting, and then I was like, I don't remember ever reading or hearing about this, so it was just kind of like I just put something to the paper and was like, hang on a minute, you know. So I just wanted to wanted to clarify that. So there's lots of stuff that we can talk about, but just kind of looking at more recent times. First and foremost, I'm curious, how was your visit to India for the first time?
Right. Yeah, we came back, what was it, 2 weeks ago, something like that. Mm-hmm. No, but it was incredible. We haven't, you know, we don't have that many places left to go. That sounds so fucking weird, but it's true. Like it's like there are not that many like big gaps on the world on the world map where, you know, that there's still a possibility to do shows. There are a few, of course, but India was definitely, to me at least, like the one of those that I wanted to tick off the most for many reasons. But we were very glad to get invited by this festival, Bangalore Metal Meeting or something like that. It's basically what it is. It's like a very it's like a mini version of a European Wacken open air kind of. Mm-hmm. You know, they actually work, I think, a little bit with Wacken too. But instead of 30,000 people or whatever they have at Wacken, they have 3,000 people, which is cool, you know, because it gets very. It's like a miniature festival with a very strong Indian vibe. So, but very professional, you know, very like, I mean, way more professional than a lot of European festivals that we've done. But all that aside, I think, you know, my biggest the thing that I really took home with me from that trip was just how overwhelming that country is, you know, just in how it hits your gut when you have some time to absorb what's going on there on the streets and in the villages, and, you know, just talking to people and so on. I mean, it's a different world. And I mean, I've had similar feelings in other places in the world as well. Japan, for example, feels very like you really feel that you're very far away from home. Or I don't know, Argentina or northern Chile, or, you know, of course there's other places that are very different to where we are from. But I think India, I haven't had that feeling in a long time, so it was it's very rewarding in that way. And we took a few days extra to just. To just be there, basically, and I had the chance to just, you know, wander off into the jungle and wander off along small village roads here and there, and, you know, just visit some really peculiar places. Amazing, actually. One of the best, like, one-off show experiences that we've had in quite a while, you know. Perhaps not including the Uppsala show. That's a chapter on its own. But yeah, that was the last show we did before India, though. So.
Okay, well, we'll get into that. I wanted to talk to you about Uppsala, man. I mean, that was a very fucking special evening. You know, I was lucky that I got to witness both nights of the show.
Okay. Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly.
And just the whole thing, man. You know, the setup that you guys had in that event. I mean, what I loved was what you guys set up on top of the escalators. So for anyone who's listening, is as you go up the escalators, you see all the different years of Watain. and then on one hand on the top you had the posters of different band members, even including everyone who was a part of the band much earlier on, before you kind of had that really steady lineup of with Alvaro and Seth. It was just it was cool, man. It was really really cool to see. And the stage, holy shit, that was when you did the first reveal. I guess I was on the Friday night when I got to see the stage the first time. It was like, I don't know how many fucking tons of bones there were, but it was like an open graveyard essentially. And it was like, it was crazy. I'm guessing that was something that you guys may have envisioned for a very long time, and then that was perhaps the excuse to get to execute it, I suppose.
Yeah. I mean, it's not every, but I mean, what made these two Uppsala shows different or more allowing in terms of like a more ambitious stage environment was the fact that we most of the guys that work at this place, which is like Uppsala's main cultural center, kind of, they're friends of ours. So they pretty much just gave us key cards to the place, and that we could be there for an entire week just to build and really build it slowly and so on. So I think that was when we heard about that, we were talking back and forth about whether to do this or not, but when we got confirmed that we were given access to the place that much in advance to the show night, that's when we confirmed pretty much, because you never have that anywhere else. You know what it's like yourself when you get into, when you've done one show on a Friday and then you arrive to the next one on a Saturday and you just fucking set everything up from scratch. It's you don't have time to then it's a matter of time, really. Time and hands, I suppose. But yeah, I guess we had. I mean, I guess what people saw there was how we mean for our stage to look. How we would like it to look every night when we perform. But it's just, we live in a world of matter and linear timelines and all that fucking horrible shit. So it's tough to make work all the time, But those two nights were very close, I would say. And yeah, I mean, the bones were very central. I think it's such a fitting way to adorn a black metal stage or a stage for Watain. I think we've been a little bit obsessed with this idea ever since. I think for me, when I saw the record cover from this Czech band from Czech Republic called TR. They released an album in the 80s called Armageddon, where they are on the front cover. The whole band there's a band photo taken in this place Kutna Hora in Czech Republic, which is like 40 minutes outside of Prague. And it's this chapel that they someone got this genius idea about what to do with all these fucking bones that were just piling up, that weren't, I don't remember the story exactly, but basically someone said, let's just make this a chapel for the dead, and it's this, I don't know if have you seen photos of this place, this church?
Oh yes,
I'm talking about. Yeah, exactly. So it's a pretty known place, I suppose. I know a lot of metal people take the extra route when they're in Prague just to take a photo there, but a fantastic place. We got to go there for the first time in 2002 on our first European tour and took replicas of that tour photo. But I think that idea kind of has always stuck in my head as like that would be the ideal place to do a concert, just right where the altar is in that church. So this was, the Uppsala show was close, but still pretty far off from what they managed to accomplish there. They had a few more 100 years to build it though. So
yeah, no, it's fantastic, man. I mean, there's something about it that there's a feeling that you get. It goes so much beyond just an aesthetic, or at least there's something like it hits you in the chest. It like just comes and punches you, like when because just from the moment, because you had the black curtains and you had a fantastic choice of classical music that was playing beforehand. I thought that was a great touch that really set the mood, and yeah, as soon as that drops, before you did that very cool fucking intro with you and Pelle doing the torches thing, and of course doing everything. I'm making you have to remember everything now.
Yeah, no, it's great. I want to. Want to. No, but exactly. We had to. We realized pretty late. I think we realized pretty late. Also, like, fuck, we need to figure out, how exactly we're gonna do it, because it's not like a normal, the way we usually do things. We have, so it's been imbued in us since the past 25 years how we go on stage, kind of, and it's just a slow progression how that has like transformed through the years. I mean, it's not a linear thing, but it's something that organically changes over the years, and maybe through different album eras and so forth. But here in this case, it's like, fuck, we need to do it differently. But of course, we had everything in our favor, so it was not a hard thing to make to make that entrance into something even more suitable than what we usually do even. So that was great. We opened, actually, I don't know how many people that got that, but the first piece of music that we played was a Von cover.
Yes. Yeah.
And it was actually an idea that we stole from, because the first time we toured the US in 2007, we toured with Angel Corpse, and on the 3 or 4 final dates of that tour, we were also joined by Negative Plane.
That's right. Yeah.
And I think those were like Negative Plane's maybe first shows, for sure, their first tour. And they opened every night with that exact Von song, and I was just like, fuck, I should have thought of that, I should have thought of that first.
Right.
But I figured now it's like fucking, it's ages ago, and they've went on to become like one of the most revered live acts in the current metal scene. I have death and black metal underground, so I figured we have a strong connection with Von, obviously. So
yeah, that's what I was gonna say. I mean, Negative Plane, first and foremost, what a terrific fucking band. I know that a few friends of mine just recently saw them in Mexico, if I'm not mistaken, and I know they were tearing the place apart. But I guess you kind of had dibs on it, with, of course, where the name of Watain comes from. And of course, I know that you kind of connected with those guys a little while ago. Just coming back as well, because I don't want to forget this, but I thought it was especially cool that, of course, with everyone who was on stage, it was yourself and Pelle who did the torch thing, because of course you guys have been doing it, so minus Håkan, it's the two of you who've been there ever since the beginning. So I thought that was a pretty cool thing. So seeing it the second time on Saturday didn't feel like a repetition at all. I was like, this is still just as cool as it was fucking last night, So had a special energy to it. What I really wanted to kind of explore with yourself was, I suppose, somewhat of a general overview of Watain. I mean, 25 years, and this is an entity, really. I guess that's the best way to describe it. That some teenagers in Uppsala, Sweden, of all places, ended up creating that over the years, ended up becoming this gigantic thing. And I think that. What's really interesting about what you guys have done is the fact that it goes beyond just quote unquote making it in the music industry. You know what I mean? It's almost like it's almost like the industrial aspect of it is an excuse for this greater thing to exist and live and breathe in a materialistic world. Does that make sense? And I feel like. I don't know, just taking what you've done and then taking black metal as far as you have taken it. I kind of look at Watain as like the Metallica of black metal. All right. And I don't mean that when I talk about necessarily popularity, although you certainly have earned a good spot of that as well. But what I mean is just that, you know, making it more than just a band, making it something that really lasts an imprint on the world, and making it something that also sets the standard for what it is about. You know, I mean, the fact that you were successful at it, that you make a living off of doing something that's so obscure and so strange compared to the rest of society, I think is really a phenomenal thing, you know. So I guess that's not really a question. I just want to congratulate you on accomplishing that more than anything.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, Metallica is a valid reference. It's one of the bands that we come back to the most often, I suppose, as a general reference, prior to, I would say, up until the Black Album. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to be said about all this. I don't know why, but I got a bit caught up when you said this about making a living, because I think what people also have to realize is that, you know, you have to. I mean, Watain itself is that living. You know, making a living doesn't mean for us to be able to afford a car and a house and whatever else people spend their money on. I think I think that we have made up our own way of what that living is, you know. And it has I mean, we like to, we've never really been into, you know, taking it easy or like resting and so on. We've been pretty like what do you call it, laborious or like there's been like a constant drive, constant energy in this band that I will never be sure really how much credit to give ourselves for, and how much that energy depends on something that has nothing to do with us as human beings, you know. No, but really, there's the definitions there are quite vague, and I'm in the eye of the storm, you know. So for me, it's very hard to pinpoint what's what really when it comes to, you know, the force that has driven Watain on. I think I see it as a rolling fireball, and that has just, you know, incinerated things along the way and gotten bigger and bigger, because that's what fire does, you know. As long as it touches things that will burn, it will expand, and it will you know, a forest fire doesn't
it's uncontainable.
Yeah, exactly. It spreads, you know. That's what it does. And I find that likeness a bit, you know, relevant, because we've grown because it's in our nature to do so, you know. But it's also, I mean, it has to do with the fact, take for example a band that has other bands that have existed for as long as we have. Take for example Death Spell Omega. I think were they formed maybe a year later or so than Watain, or 2 years, well, around the same time. We were in touch. We've been in touch throughout our entire careers, and there you have a very good example of you know, what I would call like introvert and extrovert bands. You know, I mean, we always had our spikes outwards and like, fucking come on, what the fuck do you want? You know, we've always been like that, and that Spell Omega have been like, cloaked and fucking, well, they're about something completely different, much more, internal, much more, less interested in meeting the world as such, so there's something there as well, I suppose. In terms of achievement, or however one measures that, but that they've gone on an incredible journey, as a band as well, you can when you listen to their albums and you read their interviews and you read their lyrics, I think you can really feel where they have put all their energy, but we're a little bit more like, I don't know, restless animals that somehow managed to find a way out of the cage and fucking went on a rampage, and still kind of clinging to that sense of newfound freedom continuously throughout life.
I think that there's what this reminds me of. I remember watching a very old, I say old, maybe from, I don't know, 2001 or 2. It's this small German show that you guys were playing. And I remember seeing you, there was one point where you were telling the crowd, kind of like almost challenging them. Like, are you motherfuckers gonna headbang or what? Are you just gonna fucking stand here and stare at us? And
I think I know what you mean.
Yeah? Okay, cool. Yeah, it kind of has like a bit of a green haze on it, if I remember correctly.
No, but I know which one you mean, because we were playing at kind of like a clubhouse of like a metal club in Germany, an old one called the Hellbangers Moselfranken, and we always looked up to them. When we were younger, they had Disaster, the German band Disaster were a part of that club, and they also published a few great fanzines from their members. So one is called Tales of the Macabre, and another one was called Desecration of Virgin. But two fanzines that we were like reading from the first page to the last, just soaking in all the knowledge before we started Watain. So when we got to play at their clubhouse, or they had a pub in this small town, Koblenz, where they were from, we were like, fuck, this is going to be the wildest show ever,
Right.
But of course, but we were also a little bit like, I think it was one of our first shows abroad, and they only booked us because we were traveling together with Impure, and Impure to them was like an old cult band, that had been, they've been around since the late 80s.
Slight bracket, not to interrupt you, but it's great to see that they're back, and then they're gonna be touring soon. Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely. I just had Cool Grim over actually just before I did this interview.
Cool.
So basically, we go on stage, and we're young, we're 17, 18 years old, and those guys are, okay, maybe 25, but still to us, they're old school guys, so I don't really know what I was thinking. Of course they're like, who the fuck are these guys, what's this thing, but in the end it was great, in the end I remember we stayed in touch with a lot of those guys, and it was in general like a really good a good outburst for Watain that night, but I've always, I think, struggled a little bit with like how people are at shows. I think, throughout our entire history as a concert playing band, I've always been like, how the fuck can you not bang your head? How the fuck can you, like, how do you stand still? That because I'm not used to it. I didn't grow up like that, if I see a band, I fucking, I don't know, it's just the way that I am and that all of us are, you know, I guess. So for me, it's always been, I mean, that what I said on that stage was like, oh, is this, so this is supposed to be the fucking Hellbangers Mosul Frank and what? Come on, you know, where's the fucking headbanging? And I, that sentiment, I think, has been, I've come back to that sentiment way too many times than I would have liked, you know, because I've been like, what the fuck are you doing? You know, like, are you just gonna, okay, yeah, whatever, you know, I mean, but yeah, it's weird. Yeah.
I understand that sentiment quite well. I would say, even though I didn't necessarily grow up in the, perhaps in the same era of, I guess, being in the European scene when it actually used to be dangerous, I feel like I probably, personally speaking, have a lot more common with that breed of human beings, if you can even call them that, because of the dangers, I guess, surrounding the shit that we dealt with back home. You know, I mean, for us, we used to go and play Mayhem out of a phone and headbang behind the bushes in a park so the police wouldn't see. That's the kind of, even though you could barely hear it, you can just about hear like Hellhammer's drums, and it's like, okay, are we in time? You know, that's the kind of shit that I kind of dealt with. Or even like, I can make the comparison quite easily. Like that, what you're saying resonates with me a lot, because the very first show that TRIVAX played in Iran, I talked about it on Metallica's Black Album Anniversary podcast on episode 9, I think. But this was basically at the high school amphitheater. We played at the stage downstairs. Totally fucking illegal, obviously, you know. And then there's like 200 kids there, all full of testosterone, you know. Most of them are probably virgins. They never heard this kind of music before. And then we fucking went in there, and after like 15 minutes, it was just pure chaos, you know. And I got to see firsthand that primal fucking force and aggression that this music can invoke in human beings when they don't have any preconceived notions about it, especially when they've been oppressed and in a limited environment for so long. Like you made the analogy of the animals fleeing from the cage earlier. And that was the show that about like, I mean, I was 16 when this happened, but I remember at the end of the show, I was in the middle of a solo. We were just improvising by that point, and I looked up, and then there was some fucking giant smoke coming at us from the back. And at first, I thought it was the police trying to break in to arrest us, because we were expecting that might happen, but we still fucking did it anyway. And then it just turned out to be that the kids got excited and they set the fucking school on fire with cigarettes, you know. So we had to. Fair enough, right?
Yeah. No, but that's such an incredible. That's such an incredible story, and it's so. I mean, I wonder how many people that have experienced something like that ever worldwide. You know, because there aren't that many places where the things that we do are actually. I mean, there are many places where they are frowned upon, or you know, taken as something that it's not, you know, awkward or fucking bizarre or controversial at best, but there's not that many places where it's actually illegal, and where it is actually dangerous, because you were referring to like the old European scene or as something dangerous, and I would say like that. I mean, it had more to do with a sense of danger. It had more to do with a sense of acuteness, you know. But to be realistic, I mean, most of the European kids that performed metal throughout the 80s and 90s, they were pretty, I mean, in comparison, quite privileged white kids, you know, from the West. So, but still, you know, it was a rebel undertaking, and it's still there was always this notion of truly going against how you had been raised to act in the world. You know, it was about questioning all of these things. I say was, I'm not really sure why, because I guess it still is, you know, but I don't really consider myself as a spokesperson for the current metal scene. I can't, because I really don't feel as much as a part of it as I was back then. You know, I feel I identify more as a, you know, member of Watain than of any contemporary scene. But but I do believe that there has been a change in that department. When it comes to this acuteness, this urgency with which metal was not only performed but also experienced and acted out, at shows and so on. I mean, if you watch any video from the 90s, where there's 200 people in the room, it's fucking wild.
Exactly.
Most of them are, that's how I remember. Maybe I'm just romanticizing it. I'm not sure. I don't think so.
No, I think you're right, because I've spent many times and hours and days watching old videos of, say, Morbid Angel, for example, just around the time of Blessed Are the Sacred Covenant, and then people just going fucking feral at the shows. Right. And I'm familiar with that. I spent a bit of time talking about that dynamic with Alvaro when I had him on the podcast, because of course he has the crazy Chilean background as well, and they were pretty fucking primitive there. And I think there's some magic to it, man. Like it's I really fucking appreciate the hell out of the analogy you made earlier, where you said it's not making a living, but this is just our life, and then somehow it kind of works out, because I think that's what it is. Because when you feel like metal, when you do it right, when you really get that energy, when the stars align, it's like this process of alchemy, nuclear alchemy, I suppose, that just evokes these movements and energies and creates room for, I guess, perhaps things that are inhuman actually coming into the world, and very interesting things that happen as a result of that. I'm not saying that to sound like I am just agreeing with you, but I am saying that based on my own first-hand experience, especially of those first TRIVAX shows in Iran, because we did a few of them, and just seeing what a series of notes on a guitar and bass and drums can evoke in people. There's something there. There's something very ancient about that, if anything, I would imagine. What's your thoughts on that in general?
I mean, I love to think about. I love to talk about this kind of music in terms of something primordial, or something that is ultimately more of like a savage primal origin than something sophisticated that evolved throughout the after the medieval times. I totally relate more to the idea of that this black and death metal thing that we are doing is something that is kind of a resurgence of something that has always been here, and I that's why I believe that there is also this that people talk in terms of that there is a language in our movement, in our culture, where we often refer to words like cult, for example. And I mean, I frown and I detest these fucking, I know it's used in a almost like a derogatory manner, or like a tongue-in-cheek manner. I don't come from that generation. I don't use it that way, but I think there is a relevance to that word, because it is a cult based around very primal and sacred things, I believe. I think it has much more to do with I think black and death metal has much more to do with like ceremonial circumstances or religious circumstances than entertainment contexts, but I also think that it is when that very primal aspect of what I'm talking about meets with what we could call the entertainment aspect, or the more the modern world aspect of performing music and being a performer and so on. It is when those two are taken, when both of them are taken into account, and when both of them are kind of joined That's when the high and low collides. I think it's one of the ways that they do, and I think that's when that's when you get bands like us, for example, you know. But you can I think you can never deny one or the other, really, or at least I don't, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I cannot be, I mean, I cannot pretend to go on a stage saying that, you know, I'm here to perform a, a ceremony and that's all I'm doing. That's not true, you know. I'm also there to perform a black metal gig, which will always have a wild, unchained, free spirited rock and roll side to it, you know. And that's where the metal comes in the black and the metal, you know. So I think that's really, you know, in a way how I define everything that we do. It is with that twofoldedness of we've always had one foot in the ceremonial, the sacred, the spiritual, the religious, but we've also always had one foot in, you know, this outlaw metal, freedom embracing culture, and somewhere between the two of those, you know, right where they meet in the twilight zone of those two realities is where we do our work, and or that's where I like to keep it. Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah, I love that analogy, you know. But there's something very interesting. I think I like to focus on this. You know, there's many things that we could kind of unpack here, these little pathways of
Sure.
topic. But I think to me, what's perhaps the most curious is that there's this sort of, I suppose, awakening that sometimes happens during the performance of this music, when the energies align, you know, when this primal thing takes over, whether it's the reptilian part of the brain or whatever it is. But it's when you get that crazy release of kundalini energy that you just feel like shockwaves in your spine and in your body. You get physical manifestations of it where you can't stop shaking parts of yourself, you know, and all of that comes just from playing music. It's very, very, very peculiar to me, you know, and perhaps it has that tribal aspect to it, but
But I also, sorry to interrupt you, but I also
Please.
think that is I also think that is super rare, you know, among bands in among metal bands. I don't
Sure.
think we should speak about those things as something that is, you know, frequently occurring among metal musicians, because I don't think it is. I think it is a quite rare occurrence, and I mean, at least taken to the level of that you are speaking of. You know, I can absolutely relate to what you're saying, and I believe that probably a lot of people that watch this or listen to this podcast are probably more, you know, acquainted with these kind of sensations, physical sensations, spiritual sensations, and so on.
Right.
But if you ask, you know, if you take the entire lineup of every European metal festival this next summer, including Emperor and Cradle of Filth and Marduk and In Flames and all these fucking bands that play all the time, I wonder how many of them that would relate to that. You know, I really wonder.
You make a good point.
I think there is a minority that seeks out those really gnarly paths that lead to these kind of, as you call it, you know, Kundalini awakenings. And I've always been a fan of minorities in that regard. You know, I think I'd much rather belong to a minority than a large gray cesspool of nothing. So in that being said, you know, I think let's continue to pursue that and see what we can do with it, and see how well we can define what it is that actually takes us to those places in our body and in our spirit. Because Uh, it's not like taking a drug, you know. It's not like chewing mushrooms and then you know that you're gonna be somewhere, you're gonna have an experience. No, this is self-induced. This is self-induced, and it's induced by way of art, and by way of focus and so on, and by way of tradition in a sense, you know, if we're talking now about like a black metal community here. And I think that one should never stop to wonder about these things. You know, they're not finalized in their current form. I mean the parts of black metal culture that have ventured into realms where the divine and meets with the performer. I don't think that we're anywhere close to the true potential of that, you know.
Right.
And I also tend to get a little bit bitter sometimes when I speak about these kind of things, because you know there were, for a while, you know, in the early 90s, there were people, not many at all, but again, you know, a proud minority that started to explore these things. I would say maybe 10 out of 1,000 people in that current black metal scene that were starting to you know explore these sides of, you know, trance inducing performance of taking this music into a more like divine field, including more like sacred elements and so on, and acknowledging the fact that there was something larger than themselves present in the room when the music was being performed and so on, you know. But that track, that pattern of thought was kind of like, it kind of evaporated a little bit, you know. Instead of like taking this like firm or harsh like burning path that it should have throughout the history of black and death metal, it's kind of like, but the way I see it at least, you know, it kind of got a little bit loosened up along the way. There were a few people that stuck to their guns, but most people didn't, you know, because most people have a tendency to do this at a certain age in life, and then they grow up. And you know, I mean, traditions pass through written word, but they also pass like orally, and they pass from person to person. And I feel that, you know, we are not a culture where that has its shit together when it comes to the definition and the passing of the really important knowledge that has been acquired through, you know, the brief time that this art form has been around. I think we can get much better at that, you know. But that's yeah, that's a thing on its own, I guess, you know.
It's very wisely put. I think there's a generational thing attached to that as well, where I think as we've grown older, especially in the last however many decades, just humanity as a whole has become more cynical, to the point that, you know, I almost wish that, to play the devil's advocate, I almost even wish that the religious people of the world were more fanatical, because that's the kind of balance that you know that was once there, because it's not just them but it's everyone's kind of taking everything loose. It's every man for himself, and there's no purpose anymore, there's no meaning, no nothing, you know. And I like that meaning because it doesn't come out of nothingness, you know. It's an egregore that you feed essentially, you know, which is again why I think it's refreshing but also fascinating for something like Watain to exist in the modern world, you know, where there's clearly, at least as you've put it, there are sources in which feed the experience, but sources which you then feed back to. Like, for example, I always found it very interesting how at the end of a lot of the shows you would always point at the trident on the stage, at least when you've had that backdrop. Perhaps I'm referencing to maybe a Trident Wolf Eclipse era, but even when you had that, I was thinking to myself that this is something that's being given value to, because people have gone through those wild emotions and those things, and now they're looking at it, and by looking at something you simply give it value, you know. So it's almost like it becomes a well of emotions and thoughts, and this powerful exchange that happens, you know, kind of similar to, I guess, the Mecca, you know, because you have people, you know, lots of Muslims going around circles around this black cube, you know, and that's creating its own energy field. And all Muslims around the world, when they pray, they've got a compass that points them there, so that they're head down to that point. And I think that there's something to that's an egregore that you feed, you know, that it becomes stronger. So I would go as far as saying that perhaps there's something somewhere in the ether where perhaps you can't see with the naked eye. There's a well of Watain or whatever it is that's attached to it that I think exists there. And I say this so confidently. It's I know it's a very obscure topic, but I say this confidently because you're the only band I've ever known over the years who, especially, you know, like, let's say going back, I don't know, like 10 years ago, because I saw you guys do the Bloodstock Festival in 2012, and then of course 18 as well, which we met and you kindly dedicated Furor Diabolicus to us. Haven't forgotten that. And of course that there's something like, just from the first time I saw you, it was like, I have never had a band bleed into my dreams as much as Watain has done. And I find that to be really interesting. I think that's more than just a coincidence of like, oh, you spend so much time thinking about this. There's something else somewhere out there that's, I think, goes beyond the third dimensional world that we're used to.
It's intentional, you know. It's not a coincidence, or it's intentional. We work intentionally with the layers of the in between, and we acknowledge that they exist first and foremost, you know, which I think, I mean, a lot of bands create magical things, or a lot of artists create magical art, you know, that makes their way into our dreams. I think that's a beautiful way of putting it, and a relevant way too. But some do it with being aware of that this is actually occurring, you know, and if you are, you can also build on that. You can feed that, and you can continue along that path, and make your work into something that exists not only, you know, here but also here, and in between, you know. I mean, I think, for example, I don't know, a random example, like the Doors, I think we're quite aware of the spiritual capacity of their music, you know. And they've been, I think, you know, a lot of people would still refer to them as a magical entity, or as something that was in touch with something that was way bigger than the sum of its parts, so to say, you know. But I think this fact about being aware that art and music and the words that you repeat like a mantra when you are on stage, they have inherent power, you know. They have inherent power beyond that people, you know, sing along, or you know, that people appreciate what they stand for, or whatever, you know. They have an inherent power, that a magical power that can be forcefully like enhanced and revered and paid respect to, and so on, you know, and in
Charged.
doing so, and in exactly, and in doing so, exactly, becoming more charged, and this is also rare, you know. This is also I would say, like, this is also something that only a minority of bands, I think, acknowledge and intentionally, like, work with. And I find it super interesting. I mean, I myself, it you know, it's not like I think I'm talking about, you know, 10 bands out of 100 in my record collection that even been close to these kind of approaches to their own work, you know. But I find it, I don't know, encouraging somehow that there are people that think in magical spiritual terms around their music. I think that's super how to say, it bodes well for the future of this culture. I like that there is a language around these kind of things, even if a lot of it is just gibberish and you know, charlatans who want to earn a quick buck on other people's hard work. But I do believe that the conversations about these things need to continue among the new generation as well. Like you know, and I also another thing that I would really wish for is if I could sound a little bit like old and you know, wishful about, you know, things to come. I would love to see, you know, a more defined conversation in the black and death metal scene about what people are actually talking about when they are talking about all these, you know, symbols and god names and so on, and like what do you want first and foremost? Where do you come from? What do you want? You know, because people gather around the devil. You know, people gather around this figure of power, the adversary, the great light that brings that brings illumination to the rebels and to the seekers. But they often forget, I find, you know, that they all come from totally different places in the world, from within themselves. Some people seek out the devil because they are depressed and because they've been, you know, battered to half death when they were young, or because they had, you know, whatever. Other people seek it because they see that there is wisdom there, and other people seek it for entirely different reasons. So there has to be this. I am missing. I've always been missing a little bit. You know, people shouldn't take the meaning of these symbols and these god names, these archetypes, for granted. I think there has to be. I think they should be more defined before people go on using them. You know, I would wish that. You know, I mean, it's nothing. It's not on my agenda to change how things are going in that regard. But for my own, if I could wish one thing, you know, for the future of this art form and for this culture, is a deeper understanding about what these symbols actually mean, and to not take things for granted just because you've made up your own mind about what it meant when Jon killed himself. You know, there has to be a few further steps of thought before we can arrive at before people should arrive at their conclusions about things that are ultimately greater than any of us.
Well, if I may say, that's the reason why this podcast exists, so those conversations can happen.
Very good. Cheers to that.
Cheers. Thank you, Erik, brother. Thank you so much for making the time today. I do really appreciate it, and I think it's made for a very special 2-year anniversary of the podcast for sure.
That's great. We should do a round 2 when we can, man. Would be great.
Oh, I would love to. You know, I think I feel like I've got at least another exactly 38 hours left in me. So yes, we can definitely do that.
But it's great talking to you, Cheyenne, really, and best of luck to your endeavors with this podcast. I think it's a great initiative.
Absolutely, Erik. Thank you so much, and please keep doing what you're doing. Not that you're going to stop, but you know, keep up the fucking work, man. And
absolutely.
And yeah, to the fucking death. To everyone else listening, thank you guys very much for joining us on this episode of Iblis Manifestations. We'll see you on the next one.